Celebrities in a nutshell.
The Rolling Stones, the everlasting icons of rock and roll. Welcome to Celebrities in a Nutshell. Today, we're diving into the story of one of the greatest rock bands in history, the Rolling Stones. With their swaggering stage presence, rebellious spirit, and timeless music, the Rolling Stones changed the face of rock and roll forever. From their beginnings in London's blues scene to becoming the world's greatest rock and roll band, we'll take a look at their rise to fame, their controversies, and the legacy they've left behind. So, get ready to ride through nearly 6 decades of rock history with the Rolling Stones. The story of the Rolling Stones begins in the early 1960s, in the gritty and vibrant blues scene of London. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, childhood friends from Dartford, reconnected in 1961 at a train station and bonded over their shared love of blues and rock and roll records from America. Little did they know that this chance meeting would lead to one of the most enduring partnerships in music history. At the time, Britain was experiencing its own blues revival, with bands like the Yardbirds and the Animals paying homage to American blues greats like Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, and Howlin' Wolf. Mick and Keith, along with guitarist Brian Jones, saw an opportunity to bring this raw, electrifying music to a wider audience. In 1962, they formed the Rolling Stones, with Mick Jagger on vocals, Keith Richards on guitar, Brian Jones on guitar and harmonica, Bill Wyman on bass, and Charlie Watts on drums. Named after a Muddy Waters song, the band quickly became a fixture in London's club scene, where their gritty, blues-infused rock and roll set them apart from the more polished sounds of pop groups like the Beatles. In 1963, the Rolling Stones signed with Decca Records and released their first single, a cover of Chuck Berry's Come On. While their early recordings were primarily covers of American blues and R&B songs, their raucous live performances and rebellious image quickly set them apart from their contemporaries. By 1964, the Rolling Stones were at the forefront of the British invasion, taking America by storm alongside the Beatles. The band's first American tour in 1964 was chaotic but undeniably successful. They appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, where their long hair and brash attitude caused a stir, and their hit single Time Is on My Side cracked the U.S. charts. It was clear that the Rolling Stones weren't just another British pop band, they were the bad boys of rock and roll. While the Rolling Stones initially built their reputation on covers of American blues and R&B tunes, it wasn't long before Mick Jagger and Keith Richards began writing their own material. Their partnership as songwriters would become one of the most legendary in rock history, often compared to Lennon and McCartney of the Beatles. In 1965, they released I Can't Get No Satisfaction, a song driven by Richards' iconic fuzz guitar riff and Jagger's brash lyrics about commercialism and sexual frustration. The song became their first #1 hit in the United States, and it established the Stones as true rock and roll superstars. Building on the success of Satisfaction, the Rolling Stones released a string of hits throughout the mid-1960s, including Get Off of My Cloud, The Last Time, and Paint It Black. These songs solidified their reputation as the darker, more rebellious alternative to the Beatles' clean-cut image. By the late 1960s, rock music was undergoing a transformation, with many bands experimenting with psychedelic sounds and themes. The Rolling Stones followed suit in 1967 with the release of their Satanic Majesty's Request, their answer to the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Filled with trippy soundscapes and surreal lyrics, the album was a departure from the Stones' blues roots. Although their Satanic Majesty's Request was met with mixed reviews, it demonstrated the band's willingness to experiment and push boundaries. However, the Rolling Stones quickly returned to their bluesy, hard-edged sound with their next albums, reclaiming their status as the kings of gritty rock and roll. By 1968, the Rolling Stones entered what many consider their golden era with the release of Beggar's Banquet. The album marked a return to their blues roots, with hits like Sympathy for the Devil and Street Fighting Man capturing the political and social unrest of the time. Let It Bleed, released in 1969, continued this trend with songs like Gimme Shelter, which became an anthem for the turbulent times. The song's haunting lyrics and apocalyptic tone reflected the chaos of the late 60s, from the Vietnam War to the growing civil rights movement. However, the 1960s ended on a dark note for the Rolling Stones. In December 1969, the band headlined the infamous Altamont Free Concert, a festival that was meant to be the West Coast's answer to Woodstock. But the event quickly spiraled out of control as violence erupted in the crowd, culminating in the tragic death of a fan. The event, captured in the documentary Gimme Shelter, marked the end of the idealistic 1960s and cast a shadow over the Stones' legacy. As the 1970s began, the Rolling Stones faced personal and professional challenges. They were forced to leave the UK due to tax issues and recorded much of their iconic 1972 album Exile on Main St in a villa in the south of France. The album, filled with raw, loose and gritty tracks like Tumbling Dice and Rocks Off, was initially met with mixed reviews but has since been hailed as one of the greatest rock albums of all time. The 1970s were also a period of excess for the Stones, with stories of wild parties, drug use, and internal tensions becoming regular tabloid fodder. But despite, or perhaps because of, their chaotic lifestyle, the Rolling Stones continued to produce hit albums like Goat's Head Soup and Some Girls. Songs like Angie and Miss You showed that the band was still capable of evolving, incorporating elements of funk and disco into their sound. By the 1980s, many of their contemporaries had faded into obscurity, but the Rolling Stones were just getting started. They continued to release albums and tour the world, drawing huge crowds wherever they went. Their ability to adapt to changing musical landscapes while staying true to their rock and roll roots has been key to their longevity. Even as they enter their seventh decade as a band, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Charlie Watts, before his passing in 2021, have continued to perform with the same energy and swagger that made them famous in the first place. The Rolling Stones' influence on rock music is immeasurable, inspiring countless bands from Aerosmith to the White Stripes. The Rolling Stones didn't just define a genre, they helped invent it. Their blend of blues, rock, and attitude created the blueprint for what rock music would become. Their influence can be heard in generations of musicians who followed, from classic rock bands to modern indie and alternative artists. For their contributions to music, the Rolling Stones have received virtually every honor imaginable, including their 1989 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But perhaps the greatest testament to their legacy is the fact that their music continues to resonate with fans young and old, proving that rock and roll never dies. The Rolling Stones have lived up to their moniker as the world's greatest rock and roll band. With their rebellious spirit, groundbreaking music, and unparalleled longevity, they've left an indelible mark on the history of rock. From the blues clubs of London to the world's biggest stadiums, the Rolling Stones have shown us that rock and roll isn't just music, it's a way of life. Thank you for joining us in celebrating the life and legacy of the Rolling Stones. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more explorations of influential figures in music and culture. Let us know your favorite Rolling Stones songs or albums in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world of ideas.